I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 180. Will I ever remember this without pain? Hello, my lady. If you have a spouse that is struggling with a pornography problem, then you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn, and I am a life coach, a member of the LDS faith, and the wife of a former porn addict. And in this podcast, I am going to teach you how to change the way that you are affected by your husband's choices. We can't change him, but what we can do is change the way that you respond when he makes the decisions that he does. I'm going to teach you how to manage your brain, how to process all of the emotions that seem so overwhelming to you so that you can finally live a life where you aren't living in fear of triggers and relapses. And by learning how to manage your mind and process your emotions, you are no longer going to be running on an emotional roller coaster, but you are going to start feeling so much more in control of your life no matter what your husband is doing. And I'm going to teach you all of that on this podcast. I can't wait to get started with you, and I'm so glad that you are here. I promise you, you're in the right place. Good morning, my ladies. How are you? I am so good. I feel so grateful. I am back at home, and I just finished the in-person retreat that we had this year at the beach in North Carolina. There were 14 of us there. We spent 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just having the most healing and incredible experience. And every time I do one of these, I know I've only done them twice, but anytime I do one of these, I just feel so incredibly grateful. I know that my clients who I coach, I just feel very honored, not only for the ones who already, anybody who I ever get to coach. Those of you who listen to the podcast, I'm pretty much coaching you, right? All of the people who listen to this podcast, all the women that I coach, I just feel very honored. I know how hard it is, not only to face the thoughts that you kind of wish you didn't think yourself, but then actually to say them out loud and to do so in front of a coach, in front of somebody else. It takes a lot of vulnerability. And I understand that, and I feel just so honored to be trusted with that by these women. And we just spent an incredible 3 days. We coached so much. We did some guided meditations. Everybody woke up in the morning and went to the beach and just spent an hour on the beach, just calming themselves and just relaxing. And there were some dance parties, and it was so much fun, and everybody wished that it was another day longer. Everyone was so sad that it was time to go, and everybody wanted to do it again next year. So we're looking for a bigger house next year so that more of you guys can come and experience this and have the same opportunity. And one of the biggest takeaways, I asked everybody on Saturday night, we had kind of this wrap-up session, and I asked everybody what was some of the most, what was something that was really powerful, what stood out to them. And so many women, overwhelming the majority, just said how incredible it is to be with each other, how grateful they are to meet each other. One of them said that she was a little nervous about coming. It's nerve-wracking and a little scary to meet these other women. She wasn't sure how it would be to hear all their stories. She was a little concerned about sharing her own story. And she was like, I really feel like you guys are my friends now. And I know I have this group and the support, and I just feel like I'm not so alone. And it was just a beautiful weekend. So I am just grateful coming back from that. So grateful to have been a part of that. And maybe next year you guys can join us. I'm so excited. Okay. I did want to let you guys know, I want to remind y'all, I am doing a free class next Monday on October 30th at 11 a.m. I am doing a class on how to connect with your spouse, even if he's still struggling with a pornography problem. Okay, you can go to my website, jolenewynn.com. You can go to the Coach Week tab and you can sign up for that. It's totally free. I'm going to be teaching you how to reconnect. If you feel very disconnected right now, if you feel like there's a wall between you and your husband and you don't know how to bring it down, then this is the class for you. Or if you just want some coaching. So again, it's going to be next Monday, October 30th, and it's free. So go ahead and sign up. Head to my website, jolenewynn.com. Go to the Coach Week tab. All the details are there and you can sign up. And even if you can't come live, then you can sign up and you will get access to the replay. So if you want this information, if you're curious about it, go ahead and sign up, and I would love to see you there. All right, ladies, today I want to talk about something that came up at the retreat, and it has come up so many times with so many conversations that I've had. So I wanted to address it here, and it's, will I always remember this with pain? If you have a specific memory, or maybe there's an event, I see this most often with women who have like the day they found out, D-Day, Discovery Day, whatever it is. Maybe it was an anniversary, or maybe Christmas was ruined for some reason because of whatever. And it could be because of your husband's pornography problem, or it could be something completely different. Maybe you have something else that keeps coming back up. Every year you dread that day, or that day is really hard, or there's just a lot of negative emotion associated with that day. Then this is what I want to talk about and what I want to address. Because the question that always comes up is, will I ever be able to remember this day without having all of the emotional upset, all of the emotional baggage, all of the emotional pain coming back up to the surface? Because what happens when we have that day, when we have something that happened that caused a lot of negative emotion, what our brain wants to do is our brain says, okay, we need to be aware of that day. It puts like a little red flag marker on the day or the event, and it says, okay, we need to remember this because last time we experienced this, we were in a lot of pain. So not only is there the pain of the original event, but then our brain spends a whole nother 12 months, 365 days feeling anxious leading up to that event again. And then, as we've talked about before, when our brain says, okay, this is what happened last year, it was really painful, it's probably going to happen again, I just know this is going to be a terrible day, then your brain sets it up like predictive texting. And it says, okay, it just writes the script. Here's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a mess. It's going to be a disaster. We're just going to think about what happened all day long. We're going to feel so much pain, so much anger, so much resentment, so much betrayal. All the negative emotion is going to come flooding and the day's going to be terrible. And when we do that, then that's exactly what happens. And then the cycle repeats and we spend another 365 days feeling anxious about doing it again. And then it comes up every time you see a photo or anytime somebody talks about it. It's the same thing because your brain has placed that little red flag, that marker on that event that says, okay, this is what we need to do. Remember, this thing hurt really bad, so we should always be on the lookout to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And then what our brain wants to do, another reason why our brain does this, is because it keeps the story. Our brain likes to keep the story. And the more we keep the story about how hard it was and how much it hurt and how it wasn't our fault and how we were just blindsided or whatever it is, that's the story. The more we tell that story, the more we keep the pain locked in there. Okay, so that's first of all why we have the pain in the first place. It makes total sense. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do. So we don't need to judge your brain for this. We can just be really grateful that it's working. But it's time, if you no longer want to have this be the event of the year or be something that you dread or have it ruin every Easter or birthday or anniversary or whatever it is, if you don't want to experience that every year, then what I want to offer instead is that you take a look at that particular experience and process the emotion from it. Okay? If you have an event or a memory that triggers a lot of emotion, all it means is that there's some unprocessed emotion from the original event, from the original experience. And if you go back intentionally and process that emotion, then you don't have to carry it around with you. Now, does that mean you will forget what happened? Not necessarily, right? It doesn't necessarily wipe away your memory. But what I like to use the words, how I like to differentiate it in my mind, and maybe this will help you, is I like to call it's the difference between a memory and a recollection. Okay? When I think of a memory, typically I have a lot of emotion attached to it, good or bad, right? Positive or negative. But I have the ability to recall a lot of events without having them bring up any emotion or a lot of emotion. Does that make sense? And the difference between that, and I have done this with things that have come up with my husband's, all the things my husband's done in our marriage, right? Is that I have had these experiences where there were these memories where I would look at pictures and it was really difficult to see these pictures, and it would bring up all of the emotion. Now, what I have done and this has happened especially over the last year, and so what I've done is actually make myself look at these pictures because of the emotion that it brings up, not as a way to just, make it really painful for myself, but to actually process the emotion, right? To actually sit and ask myself, what is this that I'm feeling? Okay, I did this exact same thing when I started working through how I felt about my body, right? For those of you guys who did my body image masterclass, How to Not Hate Your Body, that's in my coaching program. If you join, you can access it. But when I did that, I talked about how one of the things that changed the most, the first thing that I had to do was I had to look in the mirror and I had to face all of the emotions and thoughts that I felt and thought about my own body. Okay, I had to process the emotion of where I was before I was able to set it aside and let it go and move forward. And that's exactly what's happening here. All of the emotional baggage that we just keep tracked because of the story we tell, because of the red flags that our brain has, all of that is just keeping that emotional baggage stuck within us. Okay, and so when you're actually ready, what you can do is you can just sit and feel the feelings. Now, our brain really hates this experience and wants to resist it hardcore. And this even came up on the retreat. I was coaching a woman at the retreat about this same thing. It was her birthday. Her birthday is the day. Every year on her birthday, it's like the worst day of her life because it brings back up all the stuff. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I don't even need to know what happened. I just sat there. I wrote the date of her birthday on the board. And I said, I just want you to think about it. You don't even have to tell me what it is, but I want you to allow all the emotion to come up. And the first thing she said, she was like, nope. She started shaking her head. She was like, I don't want to do this. She's like, I just feel so nauseous. I feel like I'm going to throw up. And that is just resistance. And it's very, very normal. So if you feel that and that's a very common thing, it's like our brain will resist that hurt, that pain so hard that we will produce a physical sensation, whether that's anxiety or fear, and it will produce that physical vibration of nausea even. That's how much our brain wants to resist what is underneath. Okay, but that's because our brain doesn't understand that we can just feel our feelings and they don't mean anything about us and they're not who we are, and we can just feel them in our bodies. Okay, so when you do this, if you start to notice that you're feeling really anxious and that you're really scared, that's totally normal. And I just want you to feel a little anxious and feel a little scared and find out what's underneath. Okay, now the way that you do this is you actually just get really curious about what's happening in your body. You focus on the physical sensations and vibrations that you feel. Every emotion that we feel feels different in our body physically. Okay, grief is very heavy and it feels very different than anxiety. Anxiety is very high energy. Usually our heart pounds and our face might flush and our adrenaline is pumping, and that feels physically very different than grief, right? Every emotion that we feel feels very different inside our body physically. So when you have a memory, what I want you to do, what you can do is, if you're still feeling all of that emotional baggage, if it gets triggered every single year on that same day, I want you to sit down and focus your mind and think about that event. And then I want you to practice allowing yourself to feel whatever it is you feel inside your body and not judge it. So first you might feel a lot of resistance. You might feel a lot of tension. You might feel a little nauseous. You might feel uneasy. Totally normal. Just sit and feel what that feels like in your body. And the best tool that you can use to do this is to feel really curious. What is this that I'm feeling right now? Where do I feel it? What does it feel like? This is something that I work extensively with my clients. So if you want help with this, you can come join my coaching program and I will work with you one-on-one. And I have video modules to help teach this and all of that. But the basic of it is you focus on what's happening inside your body. Okay? Now again, your brain's going to resist it and it's going to say, well, I don't know how to do this. This is really dumb. I don't want to do this. I should just get up and go do the laundry. My kids are knocking on the door. I don't even have time for this. I don't even know what I'm doing. It's very normal to get back up in your head. what I want you to do if that happens is just have compassion for your brain. Just say, no, this is what we're doing right now. Right now we're focusing on what's happening in my body. What is it that I feel? And you keep bringing your brain back to what you feel in your body. One of the best ways that I can describe this is for those of you who have had kids, is when you're in labor and you're like so focused and they're like, all right, what I need you to do is I need you to push. And like you're so focused on the sensations in your body that there's almost no thought. Does this make sense? Maybe if you don't even have to have been in labor, but if you've ever been in pain, like there's almost no thought. It's just focusing on the sensation that you're feeling. Okay? That's what I want you to do, is focus on what's happening inside your body. What does it feel like? Is it in my chest or in my head or in my stomach or in my arms or in my legs? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is it dark? Is it bright? Does it have a color? Is it moving? And it sounds really woo-woo. Okay? This skill sounds crazy until you start to do it. And then it starts to change everything, including every single year when you hit this mark. Okay? This is hands down the most vital skill that you can learn how to do, is how to feel your feelings. I call it feel your feelings or process your emotions. I use those terms interchangeably. When you learn how to process your emotions, that's when you're able to let go of all that emotional baggage that right now your brain is holding on to. And when you process it and you let it go, because that's what happens, you feel it physically in your body and then it just releases and it stops and it goes away and it's magical and then you no longer have it. And then every year when your birthday rolls around, there's not an emotion that's triggered. Okay? For those of you who want to learn more about that, you go back to the episode that I did about how to handle triggering situations. I did that just a few months ago. That is why, and that is how it's possible to no longer have triggers. Because when there is nothing left to trigger, then nothing is triggering. Does this make sense? You guys with me? It's the best news ever. So if you're struggling, if there's some kind of date or event that comes up for you, then I want to offer that you practice this. Just take note and say, okay, all this means is that there's some emotion that I haven't processed yet. And all my brain is doing is trying to keep me safe. It's put a little red flag telling me that I should be aware of it. And then it creates anxiety around it because it wants to make sure I don't repeat it, make sure I don't get hurt again. Problem is that it keeps bringing it back up. And so I am actually hurting myself every year over and over and over and over, doing this to myself when I bring back up the same emotion that I have yet to process. And one of the biggest resistances that we will have to this is letting go of the story. When we process our emotion and we let it go, our brain will resist letting it go because of what we think it means. We will think that it means that it wasn't that big a deal, or that we made too big a deal of it in the first place, or that it wasn't as hard or painful as we were making it out to be, or maybe we overreacted. Our brain wants to make it mean, if we process our emotion, let it go, our brain wants to make it mean that somehow we are condoning the behavior or that we're suddenly okay with what happened. None of that is true. When you process an emotion and you let it go, all it means is that you're giving yourself permission to no longer keep that emotional baggage locked inside of you and repeat it over and over. You are giving yourself permission to process and move forward. And it doesn't mean you didn't forget, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't important, and it doesn't mean that it wasn't painful, but we don't have to keep it within us in order to know what the experience was. We know what it was, but we don't have to be constantly reminded of it. We don't have to keep that within us just to prove how hard our story is. We already know how hard it was. We don't need to keep the pain there just as a reminder. All that's doing is hurting us more. Okay? All right, ladies, if you struggle with this, come join me, especially next week on that free call. I will help you do this. I will coach you through it, and I will talk to you guys next week. I love you so much, ladies. Take care. All right, ladies, it's time to rise up and take charge of your healing, and I have the best way for you to do it. I have created a lifetime access coaching program that I have designed specifically for you and exactly what you're going through right now. This is where I help you develop a personal mastery of all the tools that you're learning here on the podcast in order for you to create a permanent change. go to my website, jolenewynn.com. You will find all the information there and you can sign up today and we will start going forward. I can't wait to see you there.